Ranch Management Consultants has a long, successful track record of equipping ranchers with the tools and insights to transform their ranch into a sustainable business. Their Ranching for Profit School has been recognized internationally for 35 years as the business school for ranching, where they teach economic and financial principles to increase your profit, manage debt, and improve cash flow. I'm here with Dallas Mount, CEO of Ranch Management Consultants. Dallas, how are you?
I'm doing well, Lim. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hey, thanks for being on the show. I was wondering if you'd start by just telling us a little bit about Ranch Management Consultants and how it began.
Sure. Yeah, it actually started with two lunatics from Africa, and they came over to the States together. Some of you probably know their names, Alan Savory and Stan Parsons, and they worked together and started looking at these ranches here in the States and said, "Boy, there's some major issues, and we think we can help these folks address that from the financial and economic side, where the ranch is losing money and not being able to cover cash flow needs, to the ecology side and the land health side." So they worked together and started what became the Ranching for Profit School. After a few years of working together, maybe some egos got in the way, and they kind of went their separate direction. Alan Savory started Holistic Management, and Stan Parsons kept the Ranching for Profit School and ran it for about 15 years, and then sold the business to Dave Pratt. Dave ran the company for about 20 years and sold it to me here just recently in October. So I'm the third owner of the company.
Dallas, what's your history? What's your background and how'd you get started in this?
Sure. Yeah. So I did not grow up on a farmer ranch. Grew up in Colorado Springs mostly. When I was in high school, I kind of got interested in high school rodeo and did some of that, and that led me to agriculture, and went and did a couple degrees at Colorado State University. And at that point, I started working on ranches, and every summer I'd go work on a different place. From cow calf places to yearling outfits to hay production. Spent about a year between my bachelor's and master's degrees in a feedlot, riding pens and looking at cattle there. And I really developed a passion for agriculture, for ranching, and wanted to be involved in it somehow. Once I finished my master's, I worked for University of Wyoming Extension and did about 20 years there. And really enjoyed that, but wanted more. And I started working with Dave Pratt, and he gave me the invitation to start being an instructor for him about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was interesting when I'd go to a Ranching for Profit school and work with people there for 1 week. I often felt like I had more impact than a whole year of working with the university. So that was where my passion lied, and through all my time I could into the things Ranching for Profit was doing, and Dave approached me about 3 years ago and said, "Hey, would you be interested in buying and running this thing?" So that's kind of what led me to it.
What tell me about the Ranching for Profit School. So, I mean, I understand what you guys do, but let's dive into that a little bit. What could I expect if I was coming to the school?
Sure. Yeah. So we are the business management school for ranchers. So when you come to the school, expect to be challenged. You're going to walk into a room. Most of our schools are about 35 to 55 participants that ranch all over the country. The majority of our participants, if you drew a circle from southern Canada to northern Mexico, and kind of an oval that covered the Rockies and the Great Basin, that's where most of our folks come from. So, central Nebraska towards Nevada, Idaho, Northern California, into Texas. So most people that come to the school are in the ranching business. We have a few that are either looking to get into it, or but most people there are from multi-generational family ranch, and they're looking to challenge the way they do things and looking to get different results. So we put people on teams. When you come into the school, you work with a team of 5 others and really dive in at the table and have some pretty in-depth discussions about the ranching business, about the way you do things. What we do is we take the ranch and we turn it upside down and shake it on its head and see what falls out and examine all the pieces, and then put it back together in a way that makes economic and ecological sense.
Do y'all have mostly like large operations that that participate in this, or is this something that a smaller kind of mom and pop operation can benefit from?
Our core client is the family size ranch,
Okay.
from 100 cows to 500 cows. I'd say at most schools, you're going to have one or two businesses there that run well over 1,000 cows. And you're going to have a handful of businesses there of people that might only have 20 cows. Um, I don't think the important thing is your current size. The current thing is what do you want the business? The important thing is what do you want the business to be? If you say, hey, I've got 20 cows in my backyard and that's all I ever intend on it being, then the Ranching for Profit School is probably not a good fit. But if you say, hey, I've got 20 cows, but someday I want this thing to support me, then absolutely we're a good fit. So we've got a pretty good cross section, but I'd say if you averaged everybody, it'd be that 200 to 300 cow size person.
What I was reading on your website, and you were talking a lot about working on your business versus working in your business, and I know what that means, but I know a lot of our listeners might like kind of your explanation of what y'all mean by that.
Sure. Yeah. So ranching and farming, we're subjected to the same pitfalls any other small business is. And what happens in any small business is the entrepreneur tends to work on the things they enjoy and the things that they're good at, while the things that need to be done often go undone. The real high value tasks. And so let's pick on a rancher that, the things they enjoy and they're good at are probably the ranching type of work, right? The riding, the roping, the fixing stuff, doctoring cattle, looking at animals, identifying the sick ones, treating those sick ones. But what are the things that are really going to move the needle in a ranching business? Okay? And it's generally not those things, right?
Right.
It's things like putting together the economic plan for the coming year. What enterprises are we going to do? Are we going to run cows? Or are we going to run yearlings? If we're going to run yearlings, are we going to take price protection on those yearlings? Or are we just going to stay open on the market? If we're going to run cows, are we going to be, your average commercial cow calf producer that just weans and sells the calves in the fall and take what we get, or are we going to find a niche? Maybe that's selling big groups of bred cows, once every few years, or whatever that might be. So examining those things, identifying those strategies, and then developing ways of implementing that in the ranch. Those are the things when we talk about working on the business. That's what we mean. And oftentimes we talk about the working on the business as the $100 or the $1,000 an hour work. We're working in the business is the $10 an hour work.
Right. Right. I know a lot of people, family ranches, they're always focused on paying the bills and how much cash is available. Can you explain the difference between cash flow profit loss versus your economic profit loss?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's a big deal. And I never really understood it until I heard the way they explained it at the Ranching for Profit School. So really there's three issues involving money, and we need to put them in the right order, and we need to be it needs to be clear which one of those issues we're talking about. And the first is economics. So economics asks the question, is it profitable? So when we look at something economically, we talk about things like opportunity cost. We treat like the value of those weaned calves. We'll value them at weaning time. Bred animals coming into the herd, we'll value them at what somebody else would have paid for them, right? So
Right.
we use those opportunity costs. Then we move from economics to finance. So finance asks the question, can I afford it? And how does the cash flow? Okay. So finance is where most people generally feel the stress, right? So there's not enough cash at the end of the year to cover all the bills. That's a financial issue. Or I want to buy a ranch. I want to get a cow herd, and I want to do all this stuff. So financially, there's a huge outlay, right? Now, economically, we're not really out that money, right? You pay $10 million for a ranch. The ranch is still worth $10 million when you paid for it. But how do you cash flow that purchase, right? So financially, there's a big deal. And the third thing is taxes. And it's important to minimize your tax obligation, but don't let that drive your decision making. I mean, we can
Right.
manage ranches all day long and not have to pay taxes, right? But we can also lose our shirt doing it. So most ranches put those three things in exactly the wrong order. And you look at what your neighbors are doing. Oftentimes they're managing the ranch with tax avoidance first. As long as they can cash flow the business, they're probably happy. And most people never examine their businesses from an economic standpoint. So we teach folks how to put those in the right order, which is, let's look at it economically first. Is it profitable? Then let's figure out, how can we cash flow this? And then let's worry about tax obligations, right? We tell people our job is to give you huge tax problems, right? We love it when our clients
Yeah.
make so much money that they have to figure out ways to manage the tax obligation of that. So.
Yeah, that's great. Can you give me an example of like an example situation or a typical scenario? Kind of walk us through, John Smith's ranch and how you would break it down at the Ranching for Profit School.
Sure. So most of the ranches I work with are kind of out here in the Intermountain West, and so we'll pick on a ranch that, let's say it's 250 cows, and let's say they're developing their own replacement heifers out of that, and they're also raising and feeding hay on the ranch. Okay? So there's things going on. So at the end of the year, when they go see their accountant says, "Good news, you don't owe any taxes this year." And the ranch family, let's say there's two families living on the place, and they're looking at this and thinking, well, gee, thank goodness our spouses have jobs in town so we can afford to live, right? There's just no money at the end of the year to pay themselves, to do any substantial improvements. The only years that happen are when markets line up just right, like they did in 2014 or something like that. So that's the typical situation. Is the ranch is economically, they're very wealthy, right? They've got all these assets in play, but financially there's no money coming in to really cover anything other than the immediate bills. Okay? So we'll take that ranch and we'll show them how to break that ranch apart into the various enterprises. So on a ranch like that, you're going to have a cow-calf business. You're going to have a replacement heifer development enterprise. You're going to have a haymaking business. And ultimately also you have a land investment business. Okay? Now, what we mean by that is, let me step back just for a second. It's important to realize that in ranching, the land investment and the ranch operations are really two separate business decisions. Right? And I'm sure you know this in the world that you work in. So you could own a 1,000,000-acre ranch and not own a single stinking cow. Right? You could lease that ranch out to other people, and they could run the operations of that. Conversely, we have clients that almost 1,000 cows and don't own a single acre of land. Right? Now that's a little bit of exaggeration. Most of those folks own their home place, but they might own 100 acres and they might run 1,000 cows. Right? So they're two different businesses, and we have to be clear about that. And when we muddle all that together, we don't get clear answers. Okay? So the way we do that is we separate the land investment and things like infrastructure improvements, putting in pipelines, fences, water developments. The land investment covers those. And then the operations, like the cows or the yearlings or whatever we're doing, they pay a fair market lease to that land investment for the right to use that. Okay, so that's the way we draw those lines. So back to this family ranch. So we've now helped them separate these enterprises out, and they can look at this thing and they can say, okay, well, we see that our cows are doing this, and our replacement heifer business is doing this, and our land investment would do this alone. If we just went and sat on the beach in Mexico, this is what we could make from this land investment. And then, the haymaking business is over here, and it's doing this. Now, when you look at those numbers, oftentimes there's something in the ranch business that is not working, and it's a money sink. And almost every ranch has it. And unless they've fiddled those apart, they don't know what it is. And sometimes it's losing six figures a year. More often, it's usually losing, $30,000 to $50,000 a year. So if we identify that thing and then we help them either fix it or stop doing it, well, now all of a sudden we're making more, right? So let's pick on this same ranch and say, well, the haymaking business is losing $50,000 a year. Pretty typical for what we see. So if we pushed all the haymaking machinery in a pile, lit it on fire, walked away from it, and never made hay, bought all of our hay, we'd make $50,000 a year more. Okay, that's what that's telling us. So, well, obviously we're not going to do that. So let's liberate that capital that's tied up in things for making hay. Let's reinvest that capital in something that is working, like maybe those replacement heifers are kicking it. So let's do 2 or 3 times as much of that. All this grass that we've been rolling up into bales, well, now it's available for grazing animals, right? So let's up the number of grazing animals of something that's working. and now we're working less. We've got fewer enterprises going, and we're making more. Okay, so that's kind of a typical example of what somebody might find when they come in and look at their business economically and are able to ask those questions.
Absolutely. Do you guys, I know that y'all have, the school is a situation where you would attend in person. Are there online opportunities or other opportunities through Ranching for Profit School for individuals that maybe don't want to travel? Or second part of that question is, how are y'all handling this COVID-19 crisis and people attending your school?
Yeah, so we've got some small ways they can interact with us. We've got a really active Facebook page, a YouTube channel with quite a few snippets out there that people can dive into. We're actually in the early stages of working on an online curriculum. It's not going to replace the Ranching for Profit School, but it's going to be like a precursor to it, right? So
Okay.
we'll develop some mini courses we're calling modules that people can do before they come. We're kind of put on pause right now, like everybody else is. We're optimistic this thing is gonna run its course, and we'll be back up and rolling. Most of our schools happen fall through winter, when people in agriculture have a little more time available to them. So we're hoping by this fall and winter we'll be rolling at full speed again. I think maybe it's my paradigm, maybe it's my way of thinking. I don't think people can have the same experience sitting at home at the ranch and doing this on their own that they have come into the school. Part of what makes the magic happen at a Ranching for Profit School is getting people out of their element, away from the distractions of home, putting them in a room with 40 to 50 other people that are struggling with similar things that they are, and having candid conversations where they're diving deep into those issues. And I haven't learned how to replace that yet with interacting over Zoom.
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And there's so much of that value from that is going to happen to those folks, even when class is not in session and they're just mingling and networking, and it's very big value there. I completely agree. I know y'all do some other things. I was reading, online, Ranching for Profit, First Steps, and some other things that I read. You want to talk to me a little bit about what else y'all offer above and beyond the Ranching for Profit, school itself, and also maybe, if I came to school, I took the course, what are y'all offering for folks that have already gone through it and maybe need something more, or fine tuning, that type of thing?
Sure. Yeah. So we got a couple things there. The main thing we offer is a program we call Executive Link. So when you come through the Ranching for Profit School, you generally leave with a list of, these are my action steps that I'm going to take in my business when I get home. Well, we all know what happens, right? We get home and the throes of everyday life come upon us, and maybe the people at home aren't quite as bought into this new way of thinking that you are. So you hit roadblocks. So Executive Link, what it is, it's a peer coaching, peer advisory where we get together 3 times a year, and we put ranches on boards of directors for each other, and they look inside each other's business, and they give each other strategic advice related to what they're seeing. Everybody runs their numbers the same way. Everybody's putting their numbers on the table. And then when you get together 3 months later, you're also holding each other accountable for the things that you said you were going to do. Right. So somebody that said, well, we're going to go home, we've already figured out that the hay business is losing $50,000 a year. We're going to go home and get rid of the hay business and figure out ways to secure our hay supply at competitive prices. And then you go home and you hit that wall, and 3 months later you come back and you tell your board, I didn't do it. I lost the courage to do it. Or maybe there's a real roadblock when you get home. You say, hey, we didn't think about this, right? So then when you come back to that board's going to look inside that and either say, well, why the heck didn't you do it? You said you were going to, let's get with it. Or they're going to say, boy, that's a real roadblock, and now we need to come up with strategies to address it. So the Executive Link program, we've got about 120 ranches that are involved in that with us. Again, Canada to Mexico, with a lot in between. And we've got 4 different chapters. Chapters are places where all these folks come together and have these meetings. Colorado Springs, Billings, Montana, Abilene, Texas, and actually Albany, New York, of all places. We've got a group in the Northeast there. So we've got the executive link that goes on. That's professionally, that's the most rewarding program I get to be a part of, because we get to see people make these substantial changes to their business and be a part of that as they're going along. The Next Steps program you mentioned, it's an online curriculum for graduates of the school that goes through everything we covered in class in a step-by-step method. So, if we're showing the way we run a stock flow in class and the way we handle replacement heifer transfers, and you get home and you're confused about that, it's a place for you to go to get some clarification on that.
Great. Yeah, that's usually what happens to me. I get home and I didn't take good notes or something, and so glad to hear that y'all have that. That's pretty cool. Well, it sounds really exciting. It sounds like y'all are really just, man, doing some great stuff for ranching families. I know it's probably one of the biggest challenges of all the ranching families I've ever met is, you're just in that the day-to-day grind, and not looking at the big picture, or maybe not knowing how. So I think it's really cool.
I think that knowing how is a big part of it, and when you grow up in agriculture, you're often taught, well, here's how you build a fence, here's how you pull a calf, here's how you identify and treat sick animals. But we're not often taught, okay, here's how you put together an economic plan for the coming year. Here's how you develop a cash flow that matches that. If you're in a family business, well, here's how you get a clear mission and vision from the family ownership. And here's how, as a leader of that business, you develop a plan to meet that mission and vision. Here's how you get family members on board and hold each other accountable, when we're related to each other, and all those common things that pop up and are probably the biggest challenges in agriculture is the family stuff.
Right. Absolutely. What is a typical time frame for a class, and how's it operate? If I want to come to school, where am I going to go, and how long am I going to be there, and what can I expect?
Sure. 7 days. We start on a Sunday afternoon and we end on the following Saturday at noon. Classes, we've got nine different classes scheduled over this next year. People often make the mistake of thinking, well, I need to go to a class near me. And that's actually kind of a mistake. Who would you rather be in a room with? A bunch of ranchers that ranch like you, or a bunch of ranchers that have different challenges and different ways of looking at things, right? And so there's really a benefit to going somewhere outside of your normal area, because those folks are going to be able to see things that are blocking your way of seeing it. So yeah, we got our schedule online, and folks can look at that. But it's a pretty solid 7 days. Now, I don't want to leave you the impression it's 7-8 hour days of lecture. We teach in a pretty engaging way. We actually use very little PowerPoint. Most of it's done at team discussions, case study analysis stuff, and really diving in. And by the time you leave the week, you've got a group of friends and a network that you didn't have when you came in. So it's amazing the business deals that come out of those schools and the long-term relationships that come out of them. So
yeah, it's pretty great. Where can everyone find you guys most easily? I'll have it in the show notes and stuff, but of course, your website and your social media.
Sure. Ranching for Profit is what to put in. So ranchingforprofit.com. On Facebook, if you type in Ranching for Profit, you'll find us right there at the top of the link, and same on YouTube.
Great. And I know that I follow your Instagram, so that's good as well. I'll put all that in the show notes. But is there anything else you wanted to add, Dallas, that maybe we didn't cover?
Probably something we talked quite a bit about, some of the money things. And I know a lot of your listeners are ranching families. And as I look at some of the biggest roadblocks to carrying on these ranches, that's the reason I do this is I want to see these ranches stay in the families and be successful and keep people on the land. The biggest roadblocks are the family succession stuff that goes on. And so I guess I want to encourage people to have those hard conversations, to develop the skills, to have them in a way that we can move our businesses forward without sacrificing the relationships. And the kind of things I'm talking about is, in agriculture, we're pretty traditional in terms of our family unit, which is great. But how do we allow dad the confidence to step back in the business, right? To still maintain reputation and authority and confidence and financial security, but at the same time allow Junior the opportunity to build some skills in running this business. And so conversely, how do we, if we're going to ask Junior to take over this business, whether it's he or she or whoever it is, how do we give them the skills so that they can be successful? Right? So I think those are some of the challenging things that a lot of people in that prevents these family businesses from going on another generation is we don't have those skills. We don't have the confidence that we can have those conversations and still have an intact family unit at the end of the day. So I guess I just encourage people to dive into that, to get some of those skills. One of the best resources I think are some of these management books that are sometimes not really thought about in the agricultural circles, but a book called Crucial Conversations. Right? I don't know if you've read it, Len, but it's a great read on having these conversations that are so crucial to get right, and how do we do them in a way that we have successful outcomes.
I'm writing that down. That's a book I haven't read yet, so
it's a good read.
I agree. It's having the conversations that seems to be the challenge for a lot of ranching families. Set in our ways, and we want to just dig in.
Right.
But definitely communication is key.
Yeah, sure is. So I guess I'd kind of like to leave folks with that, and just some thoughts to give them some tools to move those things forward.
Great. Well, hopefully I get to come to school one day, and I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us.
All right. Well, I'd love to have you there. I was looking through old episodes, and I was listening to the episode 14, Cowboys Like You've Never Seen Before, that movie, The Cowboys, and some of those folks that were profiled in that movie are graduates of our school. So it's kind of cool.
That's fantastic. Small world, right?
Yeah, it sure is. So.
Well, thanks a lot, Dallas.
All right. Well, thank you, Len. Appreciate the invitation.